Hi, and welcome to the Rise Up podcast. My name is Vicky Ross, and I'm your host. So, this podcast, when I created it, I kind of saw it as a space for conversations about human behavior, about awareness, healing, identity, consciousness, spirituality, and what it really means to live life on your terms. So everything that I'm very passionate about, things that I read, things that I listen, I'd like to share them. I always want to just go and share them with somebody, and this is why this podcast was created. So wherever you are right now, driving or walking, sitting quietly, having a cup of tea, or maybe just simply needing a moment away from the noise of life, I am so glad that you're here. Before we start, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to my channel so that you always get told when the next episode comes out. And if you can rate it, that would be wonderful. And if you can share it, even better. My mission is to just share this as much as possible and bring awareness and a little bit of lightness into the world. And if you can help me do that, I would be ever so grateful. So thank you. Let's begin. So there's a question that I've been sitting with recently, and that is, what happened to the child you once were? Because you didn't begin your life disconnected from yourself. I remember when I was assisting Dr. Richard Bandler, he would say things like, were you born this way? So when he was working with somebody who was anxious or lacking confidence or sabotaging themselves, whatever it was, he would always ask them, were you born this way? And they would all go, no, nobody's born this way. So he says, well, that's great because you've mastered this, but that also means you've learned this, which means you can unlearn it. And I've never, ever let go of that thought and that idea because it is so spot on. So when you were born, you didn't start life disconnected from yourself. You didn't arrive in this world believing that you weren't enough, that you arrived ashamed of your emotions, that you arrived believing that you had to earn love through performance or perfection or productivity or pleasing everybody around you. You simply arrived alive, and you were curious, you were creative, you were imaginative, you were open to life. You naturally created, you danced, you imagined, you played and felt fully. And somewhere along that way, you slowly stopped. It wasn't like one day you woke up and decided to be somebody else. It was slow. Not because you consciously abandoned yourself, but because you slowly adapted to your life. So adaptation began very, very quietly. You began learning who you needed to be in order to belong, who you needed to become in order to stay safe, who you needed to become in order to avoid rejection, criticism, abandonment, disappointment. You just learn to adapt so that you would be tolerated, because that was the only way you could survive. You see, when something happens, when adults behave in a way that makes a child feel unsafe, they cannot look at their caregivers and go, you are an unsafe, unreliable adult to take care of me. Because that will be scary, that will be fearful, to look at somebody and go, you are not capable of taking care of me. I'm at risk. I'm vulnerable. So what a child does, the child will then say, you, the parent, or whoever my caregiver is, you're perfect. You're amazing. I'm the one that's broken, and I'm sorry, and I will adapt and I'll become who I need to be so that you don't lose your shit, basically, like parents do. So the behavior changes in themselves are actually very intelligent. But I do think that human beings adapt brilliantly. because that's the way we survive. So you became quiet because you adapted. Or maybe you became the achiever because that's how you adapted for that. Or one of you out there has become hyper independent. That was an adaptation. You became funny, the clown of the family perhaps. You adapted. So if you learn to perform or to please or to overthink or perhaps to disconnect from emotions or to become the good girl or the good boy or to become invisible, it's because you've adapted. And often these adaptations are incredibly intelligent for the environment you were in. But eventually something happens. You begin mistaking the adaptation for who you are. And this is where the suffering begins. Not because life is punishing you, but because you slowly separated from yourself. You separated from your creativity, you separated from your truth, from your emotional honesty, from your spirit, from your aliveness. And instead you began living through the conditioning, through the adaptations, through inherited beliefs, through paradigms, through unconscious emotional patterns, through nervous system survival. And after enough repetition, your body begins to memorize, and this starts to feel and becomes your identity. This is one of the things that I speak about often, because your body does not follow a moral compass. And when I mean your body, I mean how the body reacts to the thoughts, the unconscious mind. How does it process all of that? It cannot tell good or bad. The unconscious mind does not know right from wrong. It doesn't have that moral compass. It simply follows familiarity. What you repeat emotionally, the body prioritizes. And what the body prioritizes starts feeling like you because it's familiar. So if you grew up in stress, stress becomes familiar. If you grew up emotionally unsafe, your nervous system adapts around protection. If you grew up needing approval, your body becomes chemically familiar with validation. So eventually, those emotional states, they stop feeling strange. They feel normal. They feel natural. And you may even say, this is just who I am. And yet, what if it isn't? What if much of what you call personality is an adaptation? And I think one of the reasons so many adults feel exhausted is not because they're weak. It's because they're trying to maintain an identity that was never truly them. So you are constantly acting, but you don't have an awareness that you're acting. It feels like, this is who I am. So you act or you become the strong one, the responsible one, the rescuer, the achiever, maybe the one who keeps everybody else happy, or the one that never slows down. I'm sure you identify yourself in one of those. And eventually something inside starts whispering, I can't keep doing this. And often that moment gets labeled as a burnout or as a crisis or anxiety, depression, an emotional overwhelm. And you know, Dr. Joe Dispenza always talks about how it normally takes a crisis for people to stop and take a step back and go, I need to change my life. And his question is always, why wait? Why wait for the crisis? If you just stop, even after this podcast, just stop long enough and ask yourself, am I really living life on my terms? Is this exactly how I would like my life to be? And if you're hearing a strong no, or even a quiet no, it's time to start investigating a little bit. Because the false self can only maintain for so long before the body starts speaking. And your body never lies because your body cannot lie. It just cannot do it. Lying is a conscious thing, it's not an unconscious. The body can only reveal what is there, the truth. And maybe this is why you can feel disconnected even when your life looks successful on the outside. Because success without self-connection still feels empty. You can have the relationship, the career, the house, the achievements, the image, and still feel disconnected from yourself. Because the child never wanted to become a performance. The child wanted to feel alive. And I've noticed something throughout my whole life. I didn't understand it in the beginning, but I've always loved being alone. I'm not lonely, just being alone. I used to think it was simply a part of my personality, because most times I'm very extrovert, I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, I work with groups, and I've been the clown, I've been the life of the party, and at the same token, I'd like to be an introvert and be alone. But it was later in life that I realized something much deeper was happening. When I'm alone, I feel free. I have no pressure, no performance needs, no expectations from anyone, no roles to maintain. It's almost like I'm having a quiet rendezvous with myself. And in those moments, I feel natural. I feel like me. I feel calm and peaceful. Not the version adapting to the world, not the version trying to manage everybody else's expectations. Just me. And I think this is one of the reasons that meditation became so important in my life. Because meditation is not about escaping life for me. It's about returning underneath the noise, underneath the pressure, underneath that identity, returning to myself. It's a space where I stop performing and I simply be. And this is why stillness can feel emotional for anybody. It's because when that noise drops away, you finally meet yourself again. And I honestly think that one of the saddest things about adulthood is not that we stop dreaming, it's that we stop creating. So creativity is far deeper than art. Creation is the natural language of the spirit. We are creators, so it's natural for us to want to create. So when you create, you will reconnect. When you create, you become present. You stop obsessing over who you are supposed to be. And just for a moment, you simply are. So maybe healing is not becoming somebody new. Maybe healing your life is becoming aware of everything that you have become that was never truly you. And maybe healing is not adding more, but about removing the interference. And maybe the goal is not perfection. Maybe the goal is remembering that part of yourself that existed before fear became an identity or part of your identity, before adaptation became your personality, and before survival became yourself. And perhaps the most beautiful thing is this: the child that you once were may not be gone. That part of you may simply be waiting underneath everything you had to become in order to survive. And awareness, presence, truth, stillness, creativity may be the doorway back. So I hope this gives you something to think about. And if this episode made you stop and reflect and you found yourself thinking, oh my goodness, this is me, she's talking to me, I'm glad that you're here today. And if you want more of me for you, you can find me. Look in the notes. And if there's somebody else in your life who needs to hear it too, do them a favor and send it over. And if you want to go deeper in your work with yourself, I run a beautiful membership community where we explore themes around awareness, spirituality, emotional patterns, identity, behavior, consciously creating a life that feels aligned with who you are. And for the rest, be gentle with yourself this week. And remember, you were never meant to lose yourself in order to belong. So until next time, have a great week. Thank you for listening, and here's to your success.